My name is Steve Devine. I live in Jefferson City, Missouri. I built a radio network. I was really interested this morning. Built a radio network in Missouri just like you all are doing in Iowa, so I was particularly intrigued with the first half of the day. Although today my role is in support of Kyle and John with regard to AT&T. I work for AT&T under advocacy and strategy. I'm a former public safety person. There's a handful of us that do that. Our job is to really focus the FirstNet effort and make sure that it's not inconsistent with the public safety needs. This gentleman's example of volunteer is one that's problematic. How do you do that when he's working at the hardware store? How do you treat his device who's working at the hardware store? And then all of a sudden there's an event down the street that he's got to jump into his truck and drive down an event. How do you manage that, right? So when the FirstNet core is up and running in Q1, on the upper left part of your phone where you see today your carrier's designation, you're eventually going to see FirstNet. When we're connected to that FirstNet core, that phone's going to say that. Now, whether or not every other phone in that family plan says that or not, that becomes part of that discussion. But certainly that FirstNet device with that FirstNet SIM card will provide that, and they will have that access. So that's why we have to manage that priority and preemption based on application in those instances. Rather, it's going to be very difficult to turn that on when something's happened because everybody's busy at that time to turn that on and differentiate between off-network, off-duty, on-duty. It's going to be much easier to manage it based on the application. So I think that speaks to some of it. Also, with regard to band 14, keep in mind that band 14 is lower spectrum. It's 700 spectrum. AT&T, like other carriers, has a number of other bands. They have their own 700 that's not band 14. They have 800. They have PCS. They have AWS. They have WCS. When we talk about that 180 megahertz of spectrum, that's all over the net. That's all over the spectrum range. So there are other. Just because there's no band 14. I've been all across the country talking about these things. It's very common for people to say, no band 14, no low band spectrum, how are we going to cover those rural areas? It's not the case. AT&T has its own 700 spectrum, has its own 800 spectrum, in addition to band 14. And to Tim's point, band 14 is going to be continued to be built out for coverage, and in some places across the country for capacity as well. So we're going to see that. That's a process that continues. So, what am I, this one here? Yep. There we go. There we go. Okay, so just some use cases, and I work on the premise that if we don't know, that's good, because that means you have input to the answer. If we come up with a solution where we say, okay, we have all of these things, we have, I can work on this here, multitasking. So we've got voice to text, we've got health sensors, we've got connected weapons and holsters and equipment sensors and smart armor and augmented reality, et cetera. How do we manage all that data? That's something we're gonna work on. Where is all that data stored? How is it accessible after it's been processed and it's available? How is it accessible in real time by the dispatcher or in the future? So the good news about these things is that we're starting here. A lot of these processes are going to come. A lot of these capabilities will come over time. And you'll have input in the process to manage these resources based on your agency's needs, based on your users' needs. What we will all benefit from in this space is with this particular device, we will see a churn in technology in the public safety space that we've never seen before. The LMR space had a very gradual incline. Nothing changed radically fast. Nothing changed immediately. It took a long time. It's a smaller market. Now we see the billions of cell phone in the world with a churn technology-wise. We see new capabilities. What did this thing used to be able to do 5 years ago? What did it be able to do 10 years ago? Think about what it can do for you and your agency 5 years from now. Radically different. Our job is to make sure that we are able to be in the dialogue to make sure the questions get answered. Because there's going to be new capabilities, there's going to be new feature sets that we want to be able to leverage should you choose to do so, but you got to be involved in the discussion. So that's my preaching for the moment. Okay, so the Internet of life-saving things. The gentleman asked earlier about 5G. 5G is really architecturally changing a number of features. There's more device to device, there's more sensors, there's more machine language back and forth. A lot of things going on beyond the typical network spoken hub model that we know to be the case today. So we're going to see a lot of that in 5G, and we're going to see a lot of this telematics in vehicles. We're going to see biometric sensors for your firefighters, heads-up displays. There was an event at it was a Super Bowl, it was a college championship or a Super Bowl a couple years ago. They handed out a bunch of devices to folks who are operating them, law enforcement, fire, in these facilities, and they were walking around with the devices, doing all the neat stuff like this. What's the problem there? Yeah, they're not looking up. So how long is that going to last? Not very long. Good information, but I can't be doing this as I'm walking down the bowels of a stadium. So that's why we have those exercises, to identify those things, to say we need the data, but we've got to find a better way to access it and to make it available to the users. So, Internet of Life-Saving Things, we all have heard Internet of Things, Internet of Life-Saving Things. This is a process that's ongoing, it's going to continue. Just look at all the features and the capabilities that'll be there, and I guarantee you there's some we haven't even thought about yet that are going to be applicable to public safety. So, one example, vehicular connectivity. We've all seen this before, mobile data terminals. It's not a new process, everybody uses them. They're quite common. What we don't see is the vehicular, the computer starting to interface with the car and the information from the user, the information from the user himself in the car. We don't see the computer operating as part of a network around the vehicle. We're going to start seeing that. You're going to start seeing interfacing between the computer, between the car, between the cameras, between body cameras, all of these things, weapon sensors, et cetera. So this is really going to be not just a computer in a car talking on a network, providing license plate checks and names and date of birth and those things and some pictures. You're going to see that now part of an integrated network within the vehicle, vehicular area network and all of those things. So when we start looking at these solutions here, everything's going to become more integrated with each other. GPS has been around for a long, long time. The difference here is it's always been best effort. And public safety generally didn't want to take best effort GPS, location-based services, and put risk their lives on that information. And there's been documented cases across the country where GPS, if it was used, would have saved lives. But because it wasn't mission critical, because it wasn't dedicated, it was just best effort, it never ended up being utilized. Today, you can be certain as a FirstNet user that's going to be prioritized data, and that GPS is not just best effort, it's going to be something you can count on. Big difference, and we think that's going to be integrated into location-based services across the board. Again, personal area networking, biometric sensors, firefighters in buildings, having the incident commander be able to see the blood pressure, the heart rate, all of that information of its users at the time. Now, I will tell you, with great power comes great responsibility. Which movie did that come from? Does anybody remember? Spider-Man. First I thought it was Star Trek. He's right, Spider-Man. So when you have all of this new information, it's got to be managed. You can't just say, well, we have all this great information, but what are we going to do with it? Well, I don't know what we're going to do with it. So there's got to be a process in place to manage that information. So the part of the dialogue has to be, okay, these are great features and I want these for my people. What do I need to do to be able to manage them? How do I need to be able to access it? We had in Texas, they've got a demo set up, and they've got video, body cam video for the users. And they sent a deputy out to a rural community where he was 25 miles away from any law enforcement officer. They decided at the dispatch center, he was going to some domestic disturbance and had been there before, that they were going to use the body camera on him. They were going to keep real-time video the whole time that he went to that incident and came back. Everything was okay. But that's a management issue that they use at the time. Doesn't mean you can do that for everybody all the time. But at that particular instance, because help was so far away, should something turn the tower, they decided they were going to do so. So that's managing the resource rather than just turning it on and giving everybody everything all the time. That won't last forever. So that's a 5G capability. You could do that. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and 5G will make some of these things more make it more device-to-device centric, so there's other opportunities that 5G will begin to introduce over time. But you're right, that's done today just in this demo network in Texas. But the point of the discussion is you can't do that for everybody all the time, so how do you manage that? So that's where the dispatcher has some say in that. But you're right, in a 5G environment, there's more options for the signal to share and a greater infrastructure in which to leverage those things. So personal area network, vehicular area network, what we're seeing is more of this networking of the resources because there's more resources, there's more information, we've got to learn how to manage it. So, incident command center, another scenario, something occurs, the incident command John mentioned earlier with regard to local agencies and deployables. Agencies have their own, they have their own mobile command post. That mobile command post, they can show up on scene, they can have a resource that will allow them to see the health of the network. Is this particular location, this incident, half mile by half mile or whatever it may be, is it being fed by one site? Is it being fed by one 120-degree antenna at one site? Is it being fed by two sites? So figuring out the health of the network, what bandwidth is available, which resources in a hazmat accident with a railroad, I may want the fire people in their video to have a higher resolution rate than the law enforcement people operating out on the perimeter, et cetera. So managing that, those are the resources and those are the places where the incident commander can take the bandwidth and split the pipe up based on the applications he needs and the resources he needs and figure out a way to distribute that most effective and most beneficial for that particular incident. So that's what I think we're going to see. And again, that's part of the local control. If we didn't have local control, everybody would be fighting over the same pipe and we wouldn't manage it properly. Again, with great power comes great responsibility. Another instance here, campus lockdown. A shooter on campus, the shooter's location identified, casualties reported, law enforcement engages SWAT. So this is really about situational awareness, making sure everybody knows where everybody is, sharing the information. When somebody gets a picture of the guy, turning around and being able to distribute that, not just with people in your department, but all public safety responders that you want to see, let's say all law enforcement at that incident. The incident commander will be able to say, look, there's 40 people here, 28 of them are law enforcement, 10 of them are fire, and 2 of them are ERS. I want to take these 28, and I'm going to take my little pencil, I'm going to draw it around those 28, I'm going to share this video with them in real time. 14 of which work for me, the other 14 don't work for me. But as an incident commander, I can take those FirstNet users at that location and bring them up for a specific time period and give them that priority access and share that particular video with them. So the ability to dynamically raise everybody up above the commercial traffic, even if they're not primary users, utility, for example, be an extended primary user. Red Cross person, somebody who could operate that, may not be primary, may be extended primary. They can be included in a specific area just by geographically looking on that iPad and grabbing them and bringing them up in real time. So the incident commander, again, managing the resource effectively. And again, multi-agency response. This is really what it's talking about. If we've got a number of different users responding from a number of different agencies in real time, for all of their agencies to be able to see their people as well as the other respondents, for the incident commander to manage that, and then making sure there's interoperability between agencies and jurisdictions. Another thing we talk about nowadays when we see push-to-talk, we're not just talking push-to-talk voice anymore. We're starting to see push-to-talk over voice over LTE, push-to-talk imaging, or push-to-talk text. So the push-to-talk feature is actually activating a number of different things other than voice. And you guys have voice taken care of on your IC-ISP system, but as we move forward, you're going to see the push-to-talk feature start to address things other than voice. We're already starting to see that in some technologies. And then license plate recognition. We have these across the interstate in Missouri. I'm sure you have them up here as well. There's sensors that read license plates and they run it through the system and it comes back stolen and it's westbound on this highway, such and such. Of course, what you get in there is you get the plate, but you don't necessarily always get the vehicle description. So be able to distribute that not just to the state police, but to the local agencies where it is, in the direction of where it's headed. So we're going to see more of that information. And then when somebody does see it and does get a vehicle description, that can be added to the record and then redistributed and repopulated to folks. So we're going to see the opportunity here, data being shared across agencies and across within and across agencies, promoting greater situational awareness as well. So.